Have you ever told a story about something that happened to you and noticed that the story sounded a little better than what actually happened? Maybe someone spoke to you in a way you didn't like. Maybe someone in authority questioned you. Maybe you felt pressure in the moment. You stayed polite. You stayed calm. You didn't push back. But later, when you told the story to someone else, it sounded different. You said things like, "I told him, that's not how you talk to people," or "I made it clear right away," or "He backed down after that." Except, in the moment, you didn't actually say those things. And the strange part is that sometimes you're not even sure when the story changed. If you've ever noticed your mind doing this, quietly reshaping a moment after it happened, then this video might explain something important about how your brain protects you. And if you enjoy exploring hidden patterns of human behavior like this, consider subscribing to MindTrace. Here we slow down everyday moments and look at what your brain is actually doing behind the scenes. Now imagine this situation. You're in a moment where someone has more authority than you. Maybe a police officer pulls you over. Maybe your boss confronts you. Maybe someone older or more confident challenges you in a conversation. Your body changes immediately. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your words become careful. Instead of saying exactly what you feel, you become polite. You say things like, "Okay," or "No problem," or "It's fine." You try to keep the situation calm. Your brain is not thinking about pride in that moment. It is thinking about safety, because deep inside your brain, a system called the amygdala, often described as your brain's alarm system, has already taken control. Its job is simple: avoid danger, avoid escalation, keep you safe. So in that moment, staying calm and polite is actually the smartest thing your brain can do. The moment ends. The conversation moves on. Life continues. But something interesting happens later. You replay the moment in your head. You remember how the person spoke to you. You remember how you felt. Maybe there was a small feeling of embarrassment. Maybe a quiet frustration. And your mind starts thinking about what you could have said. You imagine a sharper response, a clever sentence, a confident reaction, the kind of response that would have made the moment feel different. And this is where something fascinating begins to happen. Your brain starts blending the real memory with the imagined one, not in a dramatic way, just slightly. Maybe the story changes a little when you tell it. Maybe you add a sentence you wish you had said. Maybe you make your tone sound stronger than it actually was. And slowly, the version of the story you tell others becomes a little braver than the one that really happened. Most people think this means they are lying, but psychology tells us something different. Your brain is not trying to deceive people. Your brain is trying to protect your identity. Every person carries an internal picture of who they are. Maybe you see yourself as someone who is confident, someone who is smart, someone who doesn't let people walk over them. But real life doesn't always allow that version of you to appear. Sometimes you freeze. Sometimes you stay quiet. Sometimes you avoid conflict. And when your brain notices that difference between who you believe you are and how you behaved in a moment, it creates tension. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. It's the uncomfortable feeling that happens when two beliefs about yourself don't match. Your brain wants your identity to stay consistent, so it has two choices. It can accept the uncomfortable truth and say, "In that moment, I felt pressure and didn't react the way I wanted," or it can quietly adjust the memory so the story fits your identity better. Most people don't consciously choose the second option. It simply happens because memory is not a perfect recording. Your brain reconstructs memories every time you recall them. Each time you tell the story, small details can shift. Your tone becomes slightly stronger. Your response becomes slightly sharper. The other person seems slightly more impressed. And after a few retellings, the edited version starts to feel real. What's even more interesting is that this behavior is extremely human. Humans care deeply about how others see them. Reputation matters, status matters, respect matters. So when we tell stories about ourselves, our brain naturally nudges the narrative toward a version where we appear capable and confident, not because we want to manipulate people, but because our identity feels safer when the story supports it. The surprising truth is that the person you are convincing the most with these stories is not your friends, it's yourself. But there is another side to this that most people never talk about. The moment where you stayed calm and polite might actually have been the most intelligent response. Your brain evolved to avoid unnecessary conflict. Escalating a tense situation with authority figures or strangers can create real consequences. So the brain often chooses diplomacy over pride. Staying calm under pressure is not weakness. It's regulation. It's control. The discomfort that appears later is usually not about the moment itself. It's about the story we tell ourselves about that moment. We think strength means saying the perfect thing at the perfect time, but real strength often looks quieter. Sometimes it looks like staying calm when emotions rise. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace instead of escalation. And sometimes it looks like being honest with yourself about what really happened. Because the most powerful shift happens when you stop needing the edited version of the story. When you can say something simple like, "In that moment, I didn't react the way I wanted. I felt pressure and stayed quiet." That kind of honesty doesn't make you weaker. It actually removes the pressure to pretend. And once that pressure disappears, something interesting happens. You become more aware of your reactions. You start understanding how your brain responds to pressure. And that awareness is what slowly changes how you respond in the future. Not because you are forcing yourself to be stronger, but because you finally understand what your mind was doing all along. The human brain is incredibly good at protecting identity. Sometimes it edits memories to reduce embarrassment. Sometimes it reshapes stories to keep pride intact. But the more clearly you see these patterns, the less control they have over you. And that is really what this channel is about. Understanding the quiet psychological forces shaping everyday behavior. If you enjoy exploring these hidden patterns of the mind, consider subscribing to MindTrace, because the more you understand how your brain works, the less confusing your own reactions begin to feel. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can learn about the mind is not how to control it. It's how to finally see what it has been doing behind the scenes your entire life.